we are continuing with this sort of theme for today of looking back and looking to now and to the future, and finding a good way of going forward with Bjørn, who with his two colleagues has been working on in various sites in Norway, looking at how historic practices can be applied today, and which ones can be applied reasonably and which can't. And Bjørn Anders Fredriksen is an associate professor at let's see, is it Norsk? No, hang on. NMBU. I don't know what it's. How do you say? What's the actual name of it? Not the abbreviation. Oh, you're muted, Bjørn.
In English, it's the University of Life Sciences. So
yeah, okay. So it's like the Swedish one, yeah. Well, yeah. So you'll be the one speaking, but this is a project you've done with the two colleagues mentioned in the program. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well,
So
take it away.
Sure. Thank you. This is I will speak about 3 projects that me and my colleague Annegreth and Jan have done together. Jan is working at the Folkemuseum. We are academics here, and we try to get this with this between archaeology and restoration and into maintenance. And what can work in today's situation? As we have seen earlier, we have this view of the beautiful past, as shown in the picture to the left, and then in the right there are this underground section, which shows that this is quite complicated, often underground. No. There was something.
Bjørn, do you have access to a headset? Your sound quality is so.
Is it bad quality?
Yeah, it's a little bit bad. So if you have a headset, it would be good. But if you don't, we will make do.
I think we have to.
Okay.
I can. The surface is very important, of course, in the garden, and the gravel path are kept, as we have seen in the previous examples. The regional terrain modeling can be traced if the layers are kept in the ground. And the traces reveals both historic craft skills and materials used. I will have a short introduction before we take the case studies. The first point I want to make is the bottom layer. This might be only sand or nothing at all, but it also can be a very heavy bottom layer, as this 1680s example on the west coast of Norway at Stenman. And this was found, and it was also kept in the restoration. It was made of stone, and it had a layer on top with clay and smaller stone, and then perhaps have been gravel on top of that one, but it was not kept. This is a case that we showed you can just reuse what you have when it's so good and well made. But of course, in this garden, it was only the main axis was made in this way. The smaller parts had to be redone. They were then also just focusing on the main part. We have problems with heavy rain, as they had also earlier, and this has been shown also in the archaeology of the fundament, because you see in the middle section there is an old There is a ditch in the middle and under the pathway, and also on the sides of each side of the path there are stones placed to make ditches. Here we've chosen in the modern reconstruction to make new ditches on the sides to preserve the climate. Here is the top layer dilemma, as we have talked about earlier today. It is not so easy to find, can you use the historic, what is often natural gravel or sand, or do you have to use the today's more often crunched mountain or crunched bedrock or crunched or moraine deposits? This is not easy to answer, and you have to look careful about what garden do you have, what is the alternatives, what is the colors, how good is it to take rain, and what are they actually possible to get in the area. And I suggest often that you make a test of either what is natural in the area or what you can get, because it's always very good to test it. The example under is on the right, it's Hovelsrud in Norway, with authentic gravel from the shore at the property. It's very nice, and to the left there is crunched gravel, which perhaps in this coastal garden is too dark. I would suggest maybe a more white tone than that. But as you see, the two gardens, they are quite the same, so it differs quite what is the right for one garden. The first of the case studies is from the Queen's Park in the Royal Palace in Norway. It was done in connection to a building project. One part of the gardens with the white circle was redone. It was not there before. It was from the 1850s. And it was done because there is a newer path that was built up. Here is one of a historical photograph of the one area with a circular path. Another area is two paths are crossing. And on the right, it was before we did anything. We investigated the surface of the garden, found the edges of the paths. We also found the different layers, which has changed a lot over time. And it was also reddish gravel first, which I guess is the same that Joachim found at Gullbo, which is slate, red slate, which you cannot get today. So we had to use the same as is in the park today, because this was just a small project in big castle park. And the path was 80 centimeters wider than paths in the garden today. So it was redone in the 3 meters wide. There is the old alley going through the project area, and then we use this air spade to remove the earth to prevent root damage. We also had a test next to some of the trees to skip the iron edging as we used in the park, and we used the product GeoCell, which might be questionable, of course, in historic garden, but it was a small test area. I think also you can use the mechanical of how you make the gravel to also do it more stable. And this is the circular area. Here it was all the historic ground bottom layer was destroyed during World War II. So here it was made a new fundament. And the other side of the alley, we just reused the old fundament. But here we made a new one, and we made it more open with more rocks in this area. So and especially when the water was coming from this side, we tried to make it more open so the water is going down to the ground. Here it is done. And here is the first part with the plant beddings, which came back. And the original design for the pathways. The next garden is the Oscarshall garden, a royal garden at Bygdøy. It was made and was finished 1853. It was one of the most modern gardens in Norway at the time, and this was in the union with Sweden, so it was the common Sweden, Norwegian monarchy, that had this as a summer house. It has changed over the years, and now it was time for getting the old garden back. And here, Annegreth and me and Jan had a very small excavation, and we found there was edging stones from the first gardens. It was very well kept and very carefully done. And it was never meant that these stones should be visible. They were, of course, covered by gravel. Here you can see the bottom layer with the big stones, and then the second layer with smaller stones in slate. Here on the right side you can see the original top layer, which was also slate from the shore, perhaps. Very soft, small particles. And this is not available at the moment. It is, the quarries are protected. It's very difficult to get. So we had to use another alternative. We had, of course, the original layers were kept, and then we had a new bottom layer. And then the top layer, which was for the 0mm gravel. But we tried to find a color that matches quite well with the story. And in this garden, we did not use any edging. We just used what it was, sharp edging.
Bjørn, I believe that your sound quality is better if you speak a little louder.
Yes.
Because the problem is probably that the software is trying to cancel out noise, and if you speak quietly, it thinks that you are background noise. So if you speak more loudly when you speak, I think the computer will understand that it should put your sound forward.
Okay, and
thank you. Yeah, thanks.
The next is a castle on the west coast called Rosendal, another rose. It is built 1665 and has a lot of gardens from different periods, from the old formal gardens, which was 1660s, to the landscape gardens from the mid-1800s. And it is a very hilly and beautiful area. Our test area is next to the castle. It is two steep paths here, was completely disappeared and which has been redone. Sorry. And in this is from the overall view of the park before we started. See the top of it going apart. Here is we tried to do the turf edging. It is the best part, of course. Take away the turf and put it up where it belongs, and to make the design as it was from first. But it also needs a lot of machine work, and then clear cut is very important. Then we have a machine driver that is very good and can make this very precise. In this case where it was a lot of water going through the area from uphill, it was very important to put in a new piping, and we put in a very open bottom layer, which you can see in the picture, and then a more soft, smaller top layer. And this is the result of it. It seems like no one has been there because I think this is because we have put the level quite low. So it is like a traditional way of doing it, but the turf is a bit higher than the walk. And also the curving is put back where it was, and the hostels was there, so we could use the hostels to find where the hostels has been, because it was really eroded that area. I think that I end with a little more about the differences on use of rock, like if you have rock crushed from a mountain, it is not the same which mountain it is. It is very different which quarry you get it from, and if you get it from a quarry that has a color that is really unhistoric, like often bluish, then it is very not so good. But if you get from moraine deposits, not from rocks, moraine deposits, and then you crush it, you get a more natural appearance. So this helps a lot, I think. And it is also possible, of course, to mix natural gravels with the crushed ones, but it's very difficult to do this in everyday maintenance. This is what we think. Thank you. I think I stopped my presentation there.
You have more time if you want, but
maybe we can take it in the discussion part.
Yeah, why not? Do you have some recommendations? Like, are there things that you have experienced that you want to sort of warn your colleagues of, or some tips for people who want to get into doing this, to really applying the archaeology?
I think that the archaeology part is very important, because that is always the start. What do you have here? There is sometimes you have this really stone pavements, which is very good. But in other cases, like Larvik, Vicarage, which we dug 3 years ago, we found the path was just there. There was nothing else. We found where they had dug for the hedges and the ponds, but the path was only the natural sand of the area. So it is very, very different from case to case.
Right.
You really have to be clever.
Yeah. And so in Norway, do you find that a historic garden, do they have to use their own funding to do these like archaeological surveys, or is there somewhere you can apply for some kind of project money to get help to do those bits? Do you know?
Yes, it differs a lot.
Okay, so it is possible sometimes to do it with some kind of like EU funding, for example, or no, you're not in the EU, but I mean some state funding.
We also can get that, but it differs a lot. It has been sponsored by private sponsors, and it has been
right.
Spectrum of Cultural Heritage. Yeah.
Is it how is it looking to sort of source original material, and like, is there a debate as well about, how much you want to sort of use these resources and break down more mountains or source more natural gravel? How is the talk in Norway going on those topics?
I think that we have more mountains than natural gravel.
You have some to spare. Yeah, I suppose so. But
I think also it is a management issue. If you have like really, as we have in our university park here, we cannot use the historical correct. It's not possible. But we have tried to find like how big cranes should there be in the gravel to like be the best, and how to get them more like a worm tunnel to the.
So a question from the chat here: if you rediscover original material underground, and you want to actually use it, how do you clean it? Like, should it be cleaned, and are there certain machines that you can sort of rent to do that, or how is that done? Do you know?
Well, often it is not so difficult to reuse it. Often it might look quite awful, but the rain will take out much of this. So I think often it is more okay than you think.
So it okay. So it will sort itself out.
I think so, but you have to just make a test. There is no real good answer to this.
Well, I think that, in general, I think there is a discussion about recycling gravel path material. I mean, modern gravel paths as well. So there probably is some kind of solution for like cleaning to get rid of weeds and stuff like that. But yes. Maybe somebody has some experience, and you feel free to write about it in the chat if you've used a machine like that, or rented or hired a company to do it or something.
But a historical way of doing it is add a new name. We're fine.
True. There's a question here, and I'm not sure for whom it is, from Chris, about when did wooden and metal edging to paths start to be introduced? Bjørn, do you know anything about that?
I think metal edging is 1800s, but wood have been all the time.
So wooden edging has been historically used further back?
Yes.
Okay.
Not so much on paths, more on beddings, I guess.
Okay. Joachim, you want to add something there?
Yeah, the thing that I've found on wooden edging is Kärring Rosenhane in the around 1660 or so. That's the first written source that I have found on wooden edging, oak wooden edging.
Okay, thank you.
Is it of bedding or paths, Joachim?
It's descriptions of I think it's both for beddings and pathways in the kitchen garden area.
Yes.
Okay. Bjørn, so when you said historically the path is a bit lower than the turf around it, is there a problem today with drainage? I mean, you put down a pipe there for to help with that, I suppose, but like for flooding and stuff, would there be an issue here?
Yes, of course, that is an issue.
Mm.
So it is often to try to get out most of the water before it enters the gravel.
Right. Yeah, so this needs to be if you implement this, you need to think of the whole garden and where water will end up, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But that was too complicated to say. It also is a lot of gardens, especially in Italy, that has this drainage in the paths, like visible.
Right.
So I've added that sometimes just to have where it is not really a struggle to get out the water.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because I think drainage is an issue that's I think will be very important because of climate change in our climate anyway here. I just want to say, I mean, because we ended up just moving over to the Q&A session here, but thank you very much, Bjørn, for your presentation. And I know that the sound quality was a little bit so-so, but I think we still understood what you were telling us. So I think we will simply move over towards more questions for Bjørn and for the previous speakers. And we'll see what we find here in the chat. And let's see here. Jonathan asks, okay, I think this is for Bjørn. In the first project you discussed, did the age of the surrounding trees match the original construction of the path? In your first one. I don't know if you want to go back in the presentation.
And the first was the... Well, there was a different. It was avenue was 50 years older than the garden.
Aha.
So it was. This is a very complicated one because different paths are of different age in this garden. When the castle was built, it was they bought in several properties and they merged it into a castle garden. So therefore, we have a lot of garden traces within castle garden. But the alley which was the oldest one, then it was clay bottom. That one it was quite deep, and we didn't do anything about it.
Thank you. I'm thinking we can have a look at the answers to the first 3 polls, and then we have actually 3 new ones. And it would be nice to get them started as well, and then we can sort of together in the panel here interpret the findings. So let's have a look at the first one. Where is he? Bjørn, maybe you need to stop sharing. Actually, there's a red button usually, or yeah, thanks.
Right. Okay, so this is the new question about is changing climate affecting your path? So it's the QR code, and I will pop the link in the chat.
Oh yeah, these are the new questions, right?
And these are the old questions. So the first one we did first thing this morning was, have your paths been archaeologically surveyed? Most not. Quite a few people would like to have them done.
I think that's nice. And I mean, really, this is, I mean, garden archaeology is quite a new field, isn't it? Joachim and Anna. When would you say it took off?
In Sweden, I think it started in the 1990s when there was an upsurge in an interest in garden history, you know, as at large. And since we do have that problem with that there is often not enough sources, if you just want the traditional historical sources, garden archaeology was sort of a part of that from the beginning. But when it comes to methods, I think it's the last 15 years that we have been really, you know, working together in teams with the archaeobotanists and the really doing it in an interdisciplinary way. So a lot has happened.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Is it more? Would you say that other European countries are ahead of us? Or is it a new field in all of Europe in your experience?
Actually, it's difficult to say because garden archaeology has sort of started and developed independently in many different places. Of course, for Sweden, the first, like the pioneers, they learned garden archaeology from Chris Curry in England or in Britain. First, it took quite a lot of time until, you know, that it started to be applied more often. But the thing is that today we've also had a change in archaeology where more recent remains are looked at differently. We have historical archaeology, and which means that it's because of the laws that we have, you have to, if you have nice garden remains, and they are from before, I think it's 1800, or I don't have the exact date, but if they are ancient, or that if you are going to build something, you have to, you need to get permission to build if you're going to destroy some like archaeological things. It's also gardens are included in that. So that, for example, has made a huge difference when it comes to medieval gardens. So we have learned so much about urban medieval gardens just because we have started to actually excavate and find, like identify the remains of gardens, and so when we found them, then it has started to develop a lot. So it's in the what you say, like commercial archaeology as well. So almost all garden archaeology today is done in this
because you have to.
And it's included more and more in mainstream archaeology,
right,
which is great because then there is actually funding. Otherwise, it's scientific projects, so you have to apply for money from foundations and things like that. So that if it had only been that, it would have moved so much slower. But since it's now part of like mainstream, it's moving fast, I think.
That's nice. And I think, you know, if we ask this question again, you know, 10 years from now, it would probably be, we see more yeses than no's, simply because people are not aware that it even is a thing that you can do sometimes in a garden. So,
and also all the possibilities with we can use the same kind of like cooperations that we do with other kinds of archaeological remains, like with the botany and the microfossils and the pollen and all these different kinds. If we cooperate, you know, we can get so much more information out of the physical remains of gardens.
That's nice to hear. I think we need to move on. Sorry.
I know. You get me started.
Yeah, I can tell. And I mean, well, I love your enthusiasm, and it's contagious. But let's look at the next result, please, Mercy.
So
thank
you, Anna, by the way. Yeah.
The next one is, how do you keep your paths weed free? Most people use hand tools. There's I think mentions of the Swedish tool that we were discussing earlier.
Not really. That one would be Jul. Yeah, I don't know. Joachim, would you like to say something about this? Anything that's sticking out, or are you happy to see this?
Yeah, I'm happy to see this. I hope that not too much was lost in translation here, because it's kind of specific names in different languages.
Yeah, could you translate the two Swedish ones here, skiffel och krattar och skiffla to English?
Yeah,
So
this is the Dutch hoe, and it's the hoe that you are pushing away from your body, and it's used very much in the kitchen gardens as well, to get air in and weeds out. So that's so basically you have two types of hose. You have one that you push and one that you pull, and this is the push one that you push away from your body. And the other Swedish, we'll see, where do we have? It's rakes, krattor och skifflar, rakes and shuffles, but I think it's the Dutch hoe again here. So it's rakes and Dutch hoes.
Right. Thank you. So, I mean, it's nice to see that the hand tools are a big, seeing as how you could from your research, they were actually often the better option. It's nice to see that seems to be the conclusion of more people, not just Gunnevo. I want to remind you to click on Mercy's link there in the chat to answer the question, and because we've got 3 more questions, so we're gonna switch to the new one in maybe 5 minutes or so.
Yeah. I'll just show you the last slide here, shall I? Which is...
All right. But I think Joachim might want to say something else. He saw a finger.
Yeah, but it's when it's the proper time. I can wait.
No.
But
okay, but I think actually on the topic of weeds, there was a discussion in the chat about white vinegar.
Yeah. I've just lost what I'm doing, so I'll potter off and find that. you discuss.
So that was and Jan, he had something to say about it, I think. If you want to join, you can do that. You're in the panel.
Hello.
Hi.
Does it sound okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a comment on white vinegar. I learned in Schönbrunn when we were there studying that they had a ban, at least in their park, on the vinegar use, and they switched to the pelargonic instead. And they said to us that it was because of ecological reasons for that. And I didn't quite get into the details about it, but I understood it was something that was damaging. And then I guess a year later, we used it in the park where I used to work. But first time I used it at a gravel area, sadly, the day after we found dead salamanders that had crawled over this area at night. But you call it white vinegar, we call it industrial vinegar. It is quite strong and you have to mix it very well. But I wasn't aware, of course, and it was 3 salamanders, not hundreds of salamanders dying, just to say so. But I've not used it since. So I just wanted to share that. So, and I have no other experiences with it, but it is, as I understood it, some dangers there for animal life.
Yeah, and the question is that danger general to acids of that strength, or is it that one in particular is worse than some others? I know pelargonic acid is often used as a replacement for glyphosate products today. It's usually the active substance in those, but I don't know much about pelargonic acid, to be honest.
I can add some information here. So it's prohibited to use it near water because it really is dangerous to everything living in water, and it also affects the pH level on a short term. So that effect is only very temporary, but that's what I know. And it also it has been restricted. The use has been restricted in Sweden as well, with this white vinegar or industrial vinegar, and you have to have the proper education to use it as well, and when the county administrative board, the Länsstyrelsen, they are checking farmers how they use this, and you can get if you use it in the wrong way, you get a penalty. So that it's the regulations are pretty strong regarding this.
Yeah, I mean, at the concentrations that you use, it's classified as a herbicide, basically. So it's the same regulations as herbicides in general, I think. Yeah, this is interesting. Okay, let's have a look at the final slide there from Mercy. All right, apart from weed control.
Oops. Sorry, I'm having one of those days.
That's all right.
There we go. So this is maintenance techniques.
Sorry, your sharing stopped.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. There we go.
Okay. Apart from weed control, what maintenance techniques do you use on your paths? All right.
There's a real variety there, isn't there?
Yeah. Joachim, what would you say? What would you answer? Or Joachim and Daniel, actually, for Gunnebo, what would you say that you use?
Yeah, what we do is we adjust the levels, because we have a lot of visitors in the garden, and they kind of they are the best way of for weed control, but they also move the gravel towards the edges of the pathway, and we have this the construction with the camber bombering, so it's high in the middle and lower on the sides, and so it's sloping, and when you have a lot of visitors, they kind of take away that camber effect, because they move the gravel out to the sides, so you basically you have to rake it back in again to the middle of the pathway, and that's both aesthetical reasons for that and also functional reasons, because you want to have that camber shape of the road, because you get rid of the water in that way. So that's one of the things that we do.
It feels like some of the answers here are weed related, but the leaf blowing is not. I mean, in a way it is, because it creates mulch, but yeah, raking patterns, as we said earlier, is very common in the cemeteries in Sweden. This practice is still edge cutting, of course. Yeah. Nice to see. I think we're gonna have a look at the first poll question, see if we've got some answers coming in there, and then maybe move on to the next poll question, so we have time to have a look at the results before the lunch break, perhaps.
Oh, sorry.
The lunch break ends in 15 minutes, so I think we have time.
Ignore that one.
I have a couple of more questions as well.
Great.
More things to say.
Sorry, it's selecting the wrong one, even though it's supposed to be selecting the right one.
Oh, yeah. I think Zoom is.
It's not being very...
acting up today. We kicked Joachim out earlier as well, so there's. Well, maybe. Otherwise, you could just tell us if have you gotten some answers come in for the first one, and then you can just post a link to the next one and in the chat. There.
We have got. So the question is the change in climate affecting your paths? And the options were, yes, water runoff, yes, flooding, yes, other, yes, drought causing soil movement, or 5, no. And it's mostly water runoff that is affecting it at the moment.
Yeah, so that might be interesting to discuss a little bit. But Joachim, let's go. What did you want to say? Let's go with you for a while.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something about the weed control and the management of pathways that we find all through the sources and back up to our own experiences. It doesn't only have to do with what tool that you're using. It's very much a question of timing. And we can find that in the book The Pleasure Garden by André Mollet from the mid-17th century. He says it's all about timing. So the pathways, it's all about timing. When you do things, that's really, really crucial. And that's also the question with, I think with most methods, it's really a question of timing, but especially with white vinegar. So if you use it on a rainy day or if it's moist conditions, it's useless. But if you do it in the right time of the year, you only use it 3 times during a season, and you get a very, very good effect, result from that. So that's
the key to saving resources when you're doing it manually. So timing,
Yeah, so it's very. I think the management of pathways it's really a question of timing, and it's kind of nice to find it in the writing of André Mollet and in the writing of Desailliers and the Swedish Peter Lundberg and all the authors were telling this all through history, and we can experience it today in the garden as well. When you do things on the wrong day, it doesn't have a good effect. We don't get a good result. So that was one thing that I wanted to stress. And then I had a question for another panelist that is not visible right now, Kate Nicol. I wondered if you would like to say a few things about this, the phenomenon, the material hoggin that you have in the UK.
And please type it in the chat. Somebody type it in the chat who knows how to spell it.
Yeah.
It's Hoggin. I'll just try and type.
Thank you. Yeah, mercy.
And talk at the same time, which is always a challenge for me. There we go. So this is a material that I think you were referring to. I think Anna mentioned a mixture of sand and clay. So I know we have Pam Smith in the participants, and she and I will have worked together at Attingham Park on the path surfaces, specifically in the walled garden. And there it was actually found in the paddock a large pond, which was for the cattle, but it also turned out to be the source of the path material. So we managed to find, amazingly, the plug hole in the bottom of the pond, pulled the plug, out went the water, and then basically dredged another layer of this hoggin, which is a mixture of the all totally local materials, clay, sand, and a bit of loam. And so it was decided that this was the source of the original paths in the walled garden. So we restored the paths using that, which everyone was very pleased about. But the problem comes is that those paths were designed for the gardeners, of whom there were about 12, and possibly the garden owners and their visitors, say another 12. And we had 400,000 visitors a year. So those paths just weren't up to scratch. And so they are still a problem that you have to keep filling them. You have to keep recreating the camber, which is very important for the water to drain off. And sadly, when the weather is particularly bad, close off paths, to allow them to dry off. So that was a constant management task. But also the thing that we learned, again, from the historical texts, is that in a walled garden, you have another local source of path material if you have big glass houses, because you burn coal, you produce a lot of waste coke, we call it, or clinker, which has to go somewhere. And they discovered that this has the purpose of killing weeds as well, because of course it's quite toxic. So that material would have been spread on the paths. So again, as part of a sort of historic exercise, we decided to try that out. So first of all, where now do you get hold of clinker? Because the boilers no longer burn coal. So we went to the local steam engine museum, where they have exactly that material coming from the steam trains, and tried it just on a small section, just for visitors to see the difference. And it did work. It certainly killed the weeds. It looked very different because it's black as opposed to the sort of pale yellowish material that we had before, but it was terrible for visitors' shoes. So then if you were wearing your nice white trainers, they came out all black. So again, that was an experiment to see. So there's all sorts of things that you can use locally. But in the end, when we were restoring the paths in the frame yard, which was a whole new area we were restoring, we used the local, what we call, well, it was gravel, but it was mined gravel from the local quarry, which was owned by the same estate. So it came 5 miles as opposed to 500 meters. So we felt that was close enough. But those are the sort of judgments that you have to play with, really.
Thank you. Anna, yeah.
Can I just ask, the coal, it's the mined coal, the burn, like the stone coal that you get the clinker from, right?
Exactly.
And not
yes.
the wood that you make from wood.
Not charcoal.
No, exactly.
No, it was coal. Yes, that is mined.
Yeah. At Fossesholm, for example, the whole courtyard in the middle of the manor was covered in that. So they have that in Norway as well. I just was just to make sure I understood, because that difference.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
But also talking about the pH of gravel, we have a local source again of gravel here in North Wales, which is very high, very acidic. So that actually, if you select your gravel according to its pH, that really helps with weed control without having to put vinegar or anything. So that's, if you happen to have that geology near you, it helps.
Interesting. So I don't know, do any of you have any like serious experience with pelargonic acid? There's a question in the Q&A about the side effects of using it on paths, but I'm not sure we have anybody who can answer it. Also, a question about if there's any research on negative effects of heat treatments on insects and invertebrates living in paths. One can only speculate. I think that it should be harmful, but I don't know how many of them are living there as opposed to next to the paths. Maybe some of them, I mean, I suppose if you got a sand path, you might have solitary bees and stuff, depending on how many visitors you have. I don't know. Does anybody know anything about heat treatment and invertebrate life? No.
I don't think we'd like it.
I don't think they'd like it. No, I don't think so either. But that's, yeah. When is the right time, Joachim? When is it to do the weeding?
With white vinegar, it's when it's dry and sunny, and with I would say most other methods, it's also dry conditions. If you have large weeds, and you want to remove them with the roots, pick them one by one. manually, it's good to have a little more moist conditions, because then you get hold of them in a better way. But for most methods, it's you want dry conditions. It's also nice because you don't mix the materials. Usually, when you work the pathway, you get the soily, the dirty material coming up, and that's kind of a problem. When it's moist conditions, everything looks dirty when you finish. So, but if it's dry condition, it's easier to divide the different materials from each other and leave a nice result. So that's my experience anyway.
That makes sense. Mercy posted the next poll, so click on that. And the question there is, what materials are your paths made of? And that would be nice to see your results coming in. So please answer that one. So any experience of using lime and or bicarbonate, sodium, especially removing moss from pathways? So yeah, lime or some type of salt. Anybody? The rest of you feel free to answer in the chat. I mean, participants, if you'd like to. I was curious about there's another thing coming in, like if we're talking more sort of modern solutions with resin bonded paths and stuff. Kate, do you know more about that? Because I'm not an expert.
Well, I just know that it's used in not necessarily historic gardens, in public gardens where you want to ensure a hard-wearing path that actually still is porous, because we now in the UK have very strict rules about not using non-porous surfaces. There is a key difference between resin bonded and resin bound, which is in the glossary. So if you start Googling those materials, you'll have lots of commercial companies coming up trying to sell you these techniques. They're quite often, we resist them in historic gardens because by definition they're new, they're untested, and they look quite municipal, which is a term that we tend to use in a very derogatory way. Nice. So they tend not to be used. I don't know if you noticed in the chat earlier, right at the beginning, when we shared a picture of the artificial grass. That as an example, I can remember it when everyone thought this was going to be the wonder for historic gardens, that we could use artificial turf in hard-wearing areas, pinch points in the garden. And for about a year, it did look amazing, although very artificial. But soon we realized that A, it wears out, and B, you start getting, as we all know, plastic particles in the soil. So that has been stopped. So we tend to try these new ideas, and something as important as a path, you really have to think very carefully before you go down the new materials use.
Yeah. I mean, the advantage would be you could sort of have it look a little bit like a gravel path, or like and
exactly,
you've got particles bound together, so it can look
That's
a little
right.
bit
yes,
like at least it's not like asphalt or concrete,
yes,
or like, you know. But
the thing I wanted to ask you, Jenny, because you've obviously seen this locally, which I haven't here, is the raked gravel in cemeteries.
Yeah.
Now, that is the height of municipality, isn't it? In that presumably a cemetery is used and managed by the city council or whatever. They must find that works.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have some people from cemeteries in the you know, attending the webinar. So I think it would be nice to hear from them. But usually they are they are employed by the Church of Sweden. The ones, so in most cemeteries, not all, but most of them are cared for by employees of the church who work with the outside areas. And I mean, raking patterns and stuff would be more tradition than, I think, weed control, and that some of them take it very seriously. And but yeah, I mean, for those of you who work in cemeteries, how often do you rake? Do you do patterns, or just do you do it for just weed control? It would be nice to hear your experiences. So feel free to
I think of that as a Japanese tradition, which is very effective as well.
And I think that's true. I mean, you can be artistic about it, or it's just functional. And if you have any links with images, I know at least one friend of mine whose name I saw, I know worked with this for a while. So we're looking forward to some links with nice images of raked cemeteries here. We'll see. Okay, so I think, Mercy, we do have one poll question left, don't we? Maybe we should.
Yes, I've just started the new one. Let's see if I can just take a risk and see if I can screen share. You never know.
If it works, it works. But we're going to go on a. Okay, so what materials are your paths made of? Yeah.
One, which some quite interesting replies there.
Yeah.
I don't know what the Swedish one is. Again, I don't want to try and pronounce it.
Stenmjöl is crushed stone, very finely ground stone, I would say. Yeah, stone flour.
So we're still getting a few more.
Yeah, we can have a look at the results in a future sort of panel session, but maybe we can start the final question over lunch, and people can fill it in as we go on a lunch break, perhaps. But I want to just add, because we talked about pelargonic acid, Penny replied in the chat. She has used pelargonic acid, and it's definitely not as effective as glyphosate on deep-rooted weeds, such as dandelion. She would like to try it more and perhaps get better result at the seedling stage. I think that's also likely. It is still toxic to bees, etc. So you do need to take precautions when you use it. And then, yeah, Mercy, you actually also replied about the bonded material, the resin there.
Yes, I used to work in a large, well-known garden in the southeast where they had to have it done twice. They had it done initially in front of the mansion house, which was a very, very high traffic area open to the public, and it was fine. But when children tripped over the points of the very small, 2 to 3 millimeter gravel were very sharp, and it caused an awful lot of damage to their knees. So they had it redone with smoother stones.
Right. You
couldn't drive a cherry picker over it. So yeah, it looked all right, but it did actually look artificial.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, let's do this. Mercy, you post the link to the final poll question, and we thank you to all of the panelists who participated in this session. It is now time to go on a lunch break, and